Airbenders, Haikus, and the Book of Psalms. Hello, I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter, author of the book Consider My Servant Job, and this is Come Follow Me, Get to the Point, where I always show up, I always come prepared, we never take roll, and it's bring your own refreshment. And the refreshment today is a thank you for your response. I could not believe that we sold out of my book on Amazon.com. That's incredible. They're able to get other books back there, back up there on the site, and so you can get it. You can get a digital copy. Plus, you can contact my publisher. But to sell out on Amazon, that's really impressive. So thank you for your response. You know, it's the saying that if you pay tithing, you get a temple. And when you buy copies of my book, it shows my publisher there's interest in the things I have to talk about, and it opens up ways for me to publish other books. So hopefully we send a good message there. So, yeah, if it feels like I'm stalling, yeah, that's correct. We're doing the Book of Psalms for the next 3 weeks. And how on earth do you do a poetry appreciation class stretched out over 3 weeks? It's it's a little bit difficult, just because this is Come Follow Me, Get to the Point. I can get the stuff down in under 10 minutes. Hopefully, I'd like to get under 5, but that may be an unrealistic goal. So I guess probably the best thing we can do is talk about the nature of poetry. When I look this way, I'm checking my notes. I have it on a pad there. So in English poetry, you have the basic rhyme. You know, roses are red, violets are blue, candy is sweet, and so are you. Then we have a little bit more complex one called the sonnet, and that actually comes from Italy. And to be honest with you, I've read sonnets in Portuguese, sonnets in English, and the poetry works better in Portuguese and Romantic languages. But Shakespeare, our English giant, adapted it, and he has there's two forms. There's an Italian form and an English form, and you're familiar with it. 14 lines, and we've studied it all in high school. And that's another form of poetry. It's a little bit more structured, not as much fun. But you also have the other form, the Limerick. There once was a man from Peru who dreamed he was kissing his shoe. He woke up one night with a terrible fright and found it to be perfectly true. That's a little bit more fun. It's punchier, and sort of the way it's structured, it adds to the humor on the last line. And we're familiar with those types of poetry forms. However, Hebrew poetry is a little bit different. And I'm going to talk about something called a haiku. And it's a Japanese form of poetry, except it doesn't necessarily rhyme like we do it. What it is, it's a rhyme of, let me double check, it's 3 lines long, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and 5 syllables, and you try and work a nature reference in there. And it's not quite what we're used to, but it's a legitimate form of poetry in another culture. And Hebrew poetry is kind of closer to a haiku than it is to our English form of poetry. Now, if you want a good example, for those of you who are a little bit younger, you probably saw Airbender. There's a episode where one of the characters, Sokka, gets into a haiku battle with another woman in front of the audience. So I put a link in that. I actually put a bunch of links in here to other stuff. For example, another link I put in was a link to how Psalms has affected our English language. For example, we have the 23rd Psalm. We have it as a hymn, the Lord is our shepherd. We also have the Psalms that have affected Handel's Messiah. It's Handel relied upon the Psalm there, but also the rock and roll band U2 had a song called 40 based on the 40th Psalms. So Psalms cultural impact, and then we have the haiku showing up in Airbender. So it's all kind of fun the way poetry affects culture. But getting back to the nature of a haiku, it sounds a little bit odd, and we're just not quite used to it in English, so it may rub us the wrong way. But if you watch the clip of I put in there from Airbender, you can tune your ear to it. Now, Hebrew poetry is like that. It's structured a little bit differently. First of all, you have to remember there's a religious aspect to it, and if you read in 1 Samuel chapter 10, what happens is King Saul gets the Spirit of the Lord upon him, and there's a group of prophets, and they're traveling with music. And as they're playing the music, the Spirit comes upon them, and they prophesy. And since Saul's been anointed king, he has that same Spirit upon him, and he joins within the group. And so you associate music, rhymes, poetry, and prophecy are all part of the cultural thing. And in fact, one of the biggest books of spoken or oral prophecy is the book of Quran, what Muslims hold to be as a sacred text. That was actually an oral scripture, in the same way that some of these psalms were meant to be spoken orally and heard orally, and also contain prophecies in them. So it's all part of the cultural matrix. So you bored right now? Like I said, you either get poetry or you don't. You enjoy the Psalms or you don't, and that's kind of a little bit the difficulties. So here's some keys to help you unlock the Psalms. For you've seen movies like The Da Vinci Code or read The Gold Bug by who was it? Edgar Allan Poe wrote The Gold Bug, or Sherlock Holmes in The Case of the Dancing Men. Sometimes you get these messages and you have to uncode them or decrypt them. And it's the same way with the Book of Psalms. So here are some keys to understand the Book of Psalms. One is pay attention to parallels, pay attention to contrast, pay attention to the increasing emphasis. For example, in the book of Proverbs, it says, 6 things does the Lord hate, yea, 7 are abomination. 6, but we get the emphasis on the 7th one. Another one is to read about the chiasmus. Another thing is listen to how they use, in poetry, they use concretes, and also how they use visual images. So it's very something that can stick with you. You remember it well because you can picture it in your head. And like I said, this is doing a poetry appreciation class. So I put a link to the Old Testament manual where it has a longer article about it. So go to the links where you can have the links to the Airbender clip and also to the link to the Old Testament manual. So the Christ quotient. Like I said, these are the Book of Psalms. There's a prophetic aspect to poetry, a musical aspect, and a prophetic aspect. And so some of these psalms are actually called messianic psalms, and they prophesy about Jesus Christ. And this reading assignment, the most obvious one is Psalm 22. And so as you're reading it, pretend you got your little decryption or your decoder card or what have you. And as you're reading to it, some of these allusions refer to Jesus Christ. And it's a musical and a poetic way to help remind us of the mission and prophesy about the mission of Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ is the point. Thank you, and see you again as we try and do poetry appreciation on this.